Chapter 12. "Are you the one?" called out a female voice from across the station. "Yes, of course you are," continued the voice. "You look just as my nephew described you." And Holly felt herself smothered in a big hug. A huge bouquet of flowers was thrust in her arms. "You're the one who found that Muggle child, aren't you?" Yeah, I guess," said Holly uncertainly. She had barely gotten off the express when this complete stranger had run up to greet her. "A real hero," gushed the lady warmly. She wore jewel-rimmed eyeglasses, and her blonde hair was done up in a high bun with stiff ringlets that jiggled when she moved. The lady had extraordinarily long fingernails that were painted hot pink, and one hand clutched a battered crocodile skin handbag. "Look, aren't you wearing that flower clip Mrs. Timmons got you? Isn't that sweet?" she added without waiting for an answer. Her fingers reached up and adjusted the clip. Her long fingernails clicked oddly in Holly's ear. A perfumed flower scent filled the air. "We're all so very proud of you," continued the lady with a big smile on her face. "Let me take your photo." She backed up with a camera in hand. Holly stood uncertainly with flowers in one arm and her things in the other, not sure what to make of the situation. "How did you know?" continued the lady nonstop while the flash bulbs went off in Holly's face, blinding her. Holly lifted the arm holding the flowers, trying to block the bright light from her eyes. The flash bulb went off again. "When did you first realize she was a Muggle?" asked the lady. "Hello, Rita," came a familiar voice. The spots before Holly's eyes cleared, and she saw Cousin Harry standing next to the lady. In his hand, held up high out of reach, was the lady's camera. Holly instantly unblocked and braced herself for the usual rush of emotions. Cousin Harry's words were polite, but his expression and actions told a different story. Holly wanted to know better what was going on. "Hello, Harry," replied the lady, Rita. Her voice sounded flustered. Holly felt a sudden wave of guilt from the lady. "What are you doing here?" "I believe I made it clear last year that I did not want my family disturbed by reporters and such," said Cousin Harry calmly. His green eyes flashed, and Holly could feel intense anger beneath the surface. "Well, yes, you did," began Rita, "but surely this young lady isn't one of yours. I thought your little girl wasn't old enough to attend Hogwarts yet." "I said family, Rita, and I meant family," said Cousin Harry in a calm, cold voice that sent shivers up Holly's spine. "Holly," he continued, addressing her, "this is Rita Skeeter. Rita writes for the Daily Prophet. Rita, this is Miss Holly Wycliffe, my cousin." "Your cousin!" blustered Rita. "I didn't know that. Who'd have known?" "Liar," thought Holly, feeling contradicting emotions of deceit behind the lady's words. "I just thought she was—" "My cousin," replied Cousin Harry firmly, "as you well know. It's been all over the wizard community, and you are too good a reporter to have missed it." "Look," Rita said suddenly, dropping the ignorance act, "I wasn't going to ask her anything about you, Harry. You're old news. What she did, now that's news. News for today. She's news. My readers are interested. They want to know more. They have a right to know." "Goodbye," said Cousin Harry coldly, clearly unmoved by her words. "Look," repeated Rita angrily, "just because you're related doesn't mean you can dictate her life. Miss Wycliffe has parents of her own to speak for her. I should be talking to them, not you. Surely they wouldn't oppose her getting a bit of well-earned publicity." "I am Miss Wycliffe's legal guardian," replied Cousin Harry icily. "My wishes will be respected in this matter." "Her guardian?" Rita perked up. "What happened to her parents? Is she an orphan, too?" "Goodbye," said Cousin Harry coldly. His expression betrayed none of the sudden surge of worry Holly felt from him at Rita's words. "Go bug someone else," he commanded. Holly nearly jumped along with Rita when she heard the word bug, so strong were Rita's emotions, but Rita managed to control herself, twitching only a little bit. "Very well," she said, backing down, "if you insist." "I do," reaffirmed Cousin Harry. Rita held out her hand to Cousin Harry. "My camera, if you please," she demanded imperiously. "I think not," said Cousin Harry. He tossed the camera onto the ground, well away from other people at the station. Pointing his wand at it, he said, "Expulso." The camera exploded with a loud boom, showering the three with 1,000 tiny pieces. "Send me the bill," Cousin Harry suggested. "It's a very expensive camera," Rita sniffed while brushing herself off. "No doubt," agreed Cousin Harry unsympathetically as he brushed bits of camera off Holly and himself. "Well," Rita sighed with a toss of her head. Her blonde ringlets shook, sending more camera bits flying. "It's been a pleasure meeting you, Miss Wycliffe. I wish we'd been able to get to know each other better. Perhaps another time." Rita tucked her crocodile bag under her arms, turned, and walked away. She looked upset as she stomped off, but her emotions didn't match. Rita Skeeter seemed actually rather satisfied as she walked away. Holly looked down at the bouquet of flowers she held. "Wait," she called out. "You forgot this." But Rita had vanished into the crowds. Cousin Harry looked suspiciously at the bouquet. "She gave you that?" he asked her. "Yes," replied Holly. "She never gave me a chance. I never thought to refuse." Said Cousin Harry. "May I?" he asked, reaching for the bouquet. "Here," said Holly, handing him the flowers. Cousin Harry placed the bouquet on the ground near where the camera had exploded. He backed away and then pointed his wand at the flowers. "Incendo," he commanded. The flowers burst into flames, burning brightly. The two watched the fire until it died, subsiding into smoke and ash. "Better safe than sorry," he said grimly, stamping out the last bit of ash. "Come along, Holly," he said, picking up her bags. "We'd best be going." Holly didn't move. Cousin Harry," she began. "Yes?" "She touched this, too," said Holly slowly, while removing her scented flower clip. It had seemed strange, not normal when Rita adjusted it, and, knowing what she now knew about her, "I would have had to take it off before I met my parents anyway, you know," she said softly, as she reluctantly set the clip on the ground. Cousin Harry nodded. "I'll get you a new one," he said solemnly. Then he pointed his wand at the clip and said, "Incendo." The two watched it burst into flame and then dissolve into ash. They sat together silently on a bench, watching the people on the Muggle side, each lost in his or her own thoughts. Finally, Cousin Harry spoke. "Are you blocking?" he asked Holly. His voice was calm and quiet. His emotions were again their usual whisper. "Yes, sir," replied Holly. She had resumed blocking as soon as they had gotten on the Muggle side where there were more people. "Could you drop it, please?" "I suppose, if you wish." "I wish." "Why?" asked Holly as she dropped her block. Muggle motions weren't quite as strong as wizard ones, but they could still be overwhelming in crowds. Sasha moved onto her lap and started purring loudly in her ear. Holly mentally reached for the warmth of that purr to help muffle all the surrounding emotions. That was how she'd done it last year when she hadn't known how to block. She reached out and absently stroked her cat. "Can you recognize a person from his or her emotions now?" asked Cousin Harry while ignoring her question. "Sometimes," replied Holly. She'd gotten much better at determining who had entered a room without looking. "Do you think you can maybe recognize Rita Skeeter from her emotions?" "Maybe." "Could you search the emotions out here and see if one of them might be Rita?" Holly looked around. She didn't see Rita anywhere. "She could be in disguise," Cousin Harry added as an explanation. Holly closed her eyes. She concentrated on the emotions in the station. After a few minutes she opened them. "No," she said finally, "I don't sense her anywhere." Holly felt Cousin Harry relax a fraction. "I would appreciate it if you would keep scanning for her while we talk," he said. "Okay," replied Holly. Cousin Harry took a deep breath. "I owe you an apology," he began. "What?" asked Holly. She hadn't expected an apology. "I feel very strongly about reporters," Cousin Harry continued, "but Rita is right. My situation and family is not yours. I should have consulted you. If you wish to be interviewed for the Prophet or the Quibbler, I can make arrangements to have it done properly." An interview in the Prophet, her picture in the paper? It sounded kind of exciting. Rose had said that a prominent feature in the news could go a long way towards furthering one's ambitions. An interview could help fulfill the ambitions of a Slytherin. But did it fulfill her own ambitions? What did she want? "Would it be Rita Skeeter?" asked Holly finally. "Most likely," replied Cousin Harry, reaching down to stroke Sasha too. The cat turned around excitedly and started purring louder. "She's their best," he added. But we could always request someone else, if you like. What kind of questions would she ask? I don't know for sure, replied Cousin Harry thoughtfully. Probably she would ask you about Meg and finding her, since that happened most recently. Maybe she'd ask you about your experience with a Timmins baby. Holly considered his response and then asked another question. Doctors aren't supposed to talk about their patients, she said. Is that true for healers, too? I think so, said Cousin Harry. I don't really know. But you're not an actual healer, so that wouldn't apply to you. Besides, the details of Meg and the baby are pretty well known. I doubt you would be breaching any great confidence to discuss your part in it. Still, insisted Holly thoughtfully, a healer probably wouldn't do it. I don't know if I should either, she said finally. I don't really want to discuss Meg or the baby, even though you say I can. It just doesn't seem right. What else would she ask? She would definitely want to know more about yourself and being an empath, replied Cousin Harry. You're an unknown person, and I understand empaths are pretty rare. Not much is known about them. This would give her readers a chance to learn more. Holly closed her eyes, trying to imagine herself answering possible questions. She shivered unconsciously. I suppose I could try to explain what it's like being an empath, she began hesitantly, but that's kind of hard to do. I don't really want to talk about what it was like growing up as an empath, all the problems I had because I didn't know what was wrong with me, nor do I want to talk about how I almost died or learned to block. That's all too painful to recount. Besides, she added suddenly, I can't imagine Dad being too happy if I got featured in a wizard newspaper. Cousin Harry smiled briefly. He need never know, if that's the way you want it, he said. It's not like your dad reads the Daily Prophet. True, agreed Holly. But if I did an interview and deliberately kept it from him, that would be like lying, and I don't want to do that either. Dad doesn't ask about Hogwarts, but I've never done anything I'd be reluctant to tell him about were he to ask. Holly made up her mind and took a deep breath. I don't want to do an interview, she told Cousin Harry. I can't think of anything I'd feel comfortable talking about, so I think I'd be happier not talking. Cousin Harry leaned back and sighed with relief. Very well, he said calmly. Let me know if you ever change your mind. He didn't say so, but Holly knew he was pleased with her decision. She could tell he hadn't wanted her to do an interview, but he wouldn't have prevented it either. Rita and I have an understanding, and I'll do what I can to keep you out of the news. But I can only do so much, he added. Rita can be a very determined person when she wants a story, he continued, explaining further, and it seems she has taken an interest in you. Cousin Harry shifted his seat on the bench and scanned the crowds at the station. Reporters can get information for their stories without doing formal interviews, he added, so it would be wise for you to remain alert for other persons, both those you can see and those you cannot. People may try to listen into your conversations and or watch you when you think you're alone. Rita may find other ways to slip you in as news without naming names. Cousin Harry paused to take a breath and then continued. Unfortunately, he mused, my guardianship of you has piqued your interest. Your family is still safe, still hidden. I don't think Rita can find them using wizard magic. Only I can, because your dad contacted me. But Rita might come close using old-fashioned muggle detective work. Your dad would never wish to be bothered by wizard reporters, and we must make sure it never happens. If you ever suspect someone is following you, or is there, but shouldn't be, let me know immediately, and I'll try to head that person off, okay? Yes, sir, replied Holly. Then she added, Mr. Potter? Yes? She lied when she said you were old news. Yeah, I know, he replied glumly. He looked up, scanning the people again. I think I see your parents coming. Is Rita here? No, sir, replied Holly after a moment. Good, said Cousin Harry. Shall we go greet them? He straightened and stood up. Holly, still not blocking, felt twinge of apprehension. Don't worry, she assured him, remembering the last time Cousin Harry and her dad had met at the station. Nothing bad happened at school this time. It'll be okay. Cousin Harry looked down at Holly and smiled, his emotions again becoming mere whispers. Of course it will, he agreed. Holly wrapped herself around her mom and dad as soon as she got close. Thank you for letting me go, she whispered in Dad's ear. It was good, but I've missed you so much, she told him. Dylan hugged Holly in return. I'm glad you're safe and sound, he whispered back. Holly gave Vernon a hug, too. He'd come along wanting to join his parents when they picked up Holly at the station. Holly was glad to see him. She wanted to learn all about his new friend, Kinney. Happy holidays, Mr. Potter, said Laurel with a bright smile, holding out a brightly wrapped package. It's more cookies. I hope you like them. I'm sure we will, but you shouldn't have, replied Mr. Potter a bit uncomfortably. I mean, I haven't. There's no need, assured Laurel. You deserve them. We really appreciate what you've done for Holly, don't we, dear? She turned to Dylan for confirmation. Yeah, said Dylan, sounding equally uncomfortable. In that case, said Harry, taking the package graciously, we mustn't let these cookies go to waste. Thank you so much. I know we'll enjoy them. Well, I must be going now, he added. Happy holidays to you, too. I'll see you later. Without waiting for a reply, he walked off, vanishing quickly within the crowds. This time, however, Harry Potter did not leave to rejoin his family. Moving swiftly, he ducked out a side exit and circled around the building to a station entrance. Walking quietly, he scanned the area around the entrance for something he had seen once before. Finally, he spied it. A very large, fat beetle. It was resting on the side of a trash can. Reaching out from behind, he grabbed the beetle quickly and cupped it with both hands to prevent it from escaping. Then Harry moved swiftly to the side of the station out of sight of the entrance. Barely had he gotten around the corner when the beetle exploded in his hands, becoming a very large person with a fat crocodile purse. The person landed squarely on top of Harry, causing the two to tumble to the ground. Just what on earth do you think you're doing? Exploded Rita Skeeter, scrambling to get up and off of Harry. Stopping you, replied Harry calmly. He, too, was trying to get up, making it to his knees and then a crouch. His efforts succeeded in keeping Rita down longer, as he deliberately used her for leverage to rise. I wasn't going to do anything bad, protested Rita, finally breaking free of Harry. She no longer bothered to try to get up. Her hair had become a tangled mess and her glasses had gone askew from the fall. One of her long fingernails had broken in the fray. I was just going to do what I wanted to do for you and your family after your parents died. Interview them. Except Dumbledore wouldn't let me, she complained while straightening her glasses. At least there was some sort of a reason to keep their identities secret, seeing as no one knew exactly what happened to you-know-who at the time. That's not the case anymore. She's news. They could be news. They're the proud parents of a gifted empath. They're muggles, hissed Harry furiously. They don't want to be bothered by wizard stuff ever. That's why I'm her guardian. Leave them alone. Oh, come on now, said Rita in disbelief. You can't be serious. Why would they refuse? How could they not? She broke off. You know, she said thoughtfully, I heard a rumor your aunt and uncle were major wizard haters who never told you a thing about your parents when you grew up. But I never believed it. Do you mean to say, she looked at Harry with new eyes, that it was actually true? Harry just glared, saying nothing. And now they have another wizard in the family? Rita laughed. Oh, that's rich. I bet they're fit to be tied. All right, she said, holding out a hand to Harry for assistance up. I'll leave the family alone for now, and her. Harry rose and helped pull Rita to her feet. But if she continues to make news, I can't let someone else have the scoop. Just keep them out of the news, repeated Harry threateningly. Rita ignored him and looked towards the parking lot. I suppose they're gone now, she mused out loud regretfully while straightening her clothes. I hope so. Oh, well, she sighed, sounding unconcerned. Another time. With that, she vanished with a loud crack. Harry brushed himself off and checked the parking lot. Good, he thought to himself. Dudley's car is gone. Harry apparated to number 12 Grimmauld Place. Threatening to reveal her animagus status to the ministry had kept Rita's journalism away from him and his family for many years, but if she could weasel around it, she would. Rita's word was good for about as long as he could keep his eyes on her. He'd consult Hermione later about some spells to keep Rita away from the Wycliffes. Maybe they should put some sort of anti-wizard wards covering up the neighborhood where they lived. Bright and early the next morning, Laurel and Holly took off for Holly's hair appointment and a bit of shopping. Holly's hair needed to be cut in anticipation of Grandmum and Granddad Wycliffe's arrival. Actually, Laurel had been waiting a long time for this day. She finally had a chance to speak privately with Holly and find out what was going on at Hogwarts, and in particular, what had happened with Meg. While she heard about Meg from Harry Potter, he hadn't elaborated. Holly readily opened up and told her the whole story from start to finish, even the part about watching Meg return. Laurel had a chance to get all the details. Well, at least more than before. When Laurel had asked if they ever found out who had done it, Holly had instantly clammed up and merely said the ministry had never identified anyone for sure. While they shopped for presents and more clothes, Laurel learned about Holly's classes and the potions contest. Then they moved on to other topics: Holly's visit with the Potters, shopping in Diagon Alley, the Timmins baby. On the way home, Laurel decided it was time to broach the topic that concerned her most. Last spring, when her health stone had turned nearly black. Laurel had asked Holly about it last summer when they had gone together to get her hair cut. But at the time, Holly insisted the whole affair had been no big deal. Of course, Holly had been trying to get back into Hogwarts. Laurel was sure Holly would have never said anything that might give Dylan further reason to keep her away. While Laurel had a general idea from Harry Potter what had happened, his description had been rather vague. That might be good enough for Dylan, but Laurel had no doubt Harry left out quite a bit, and she wanted to know the rest. Laurel pulled her car over to a stop next to the park. This was a conversation she did not want to have while distracted by driving. "Holly," she began, "I want to know what happened last spring." "I told you, Mum," stated Holly, fidgeting with a strand of short curly blonde hair while looking out the window. "It was nothing, really. It was just a big misunderstanding." "Holly, dear," said Laurel, twisting in the seat. "Look at me," she commanded. Reluctantly, Holly turned her head, and Laurel looked at Holly straight in the eyes. "I seriously doubt that a big misunderstanding would be enough to turn that healthstone you gave me dark purple. I'm not planning to tell your dad," she assured Holly, "but I want to know what happened, what really happened." Holly looked away. "Oh, all right," she sighed. "We were in this room, Albus and me, and a huge mirror exploded right in our faces, and glass flew all over the place. Then the ceiling started to fall in on us, block by block. We would have been crushed by the blocks if Cousin Harry hadn't pulled us out when he did. I expect that's why the health stone went dark," she concluded. That fit basically in with what Harry Potter had said, but not exactly, and Holly had given in way too easily. "What about the rest of the story?" asked Laurel casually. "What?" asked Holly while not looking at Laurel. "There's nothing more to tell." "Holly, dear," began Laurel, "you didn't mention how you got into that room to begin with, and Harry Potter specifically said that wearing clothing we purchased helped you cope with your experience. I hardly think a set of clothes would have saved you from flying glass or a collapsing room, nor would the woven belt I sent you last year. I'm your mother, sweetie," Laurel continued. "I want to know everything." Holly sat silently. Her knees came up and her arms hugged them tightly. She buried her face in her lap. Her short curly hair covered the rest of her face. Sasha, who had spent her time in the car while they shopped, circled anxiously on Holly's shoulder, purring loudly. Laurel could tell Holly was wavering. "I'm your mum," she repeated softly. "I'm supposed to know everything, good and bad. I love you no matter what." "You won't believe it," Holly finally said, so softly that Laurel could barely hear her. "I'm your mother," Laurel repeated. "I've been listening about grasshoppers who become people, houses coming out of nowhere, talking portraits and exploding spells all morning. Of course I'll believe you. You're not one to lie, dear," she reminded Holly. Holly started rocking herself in her seat. "This is different," she mumbled. "Not even the wizards really believe it." "I kind of figured that," replied Laurel dryly. "Harry Potter won't give me any of the details either, but I know it must have been pretty serious. You told him, right?" "Yes," came a small voice. "Does he believe you?" "Yes." "Then I'll believe you," Laurel said firmly. "Now tell me about this trap intended for Harry Potter that almost got you killed. Start from the beginning." Holly rocked some more. When she finally spoke, her voice was so soft it was barely a whisper. "I didn't know it was a trap. Not till the very end. All I knew was that when I woke up, it wasn't the same Hogwarts anymore." For the first time, Laurel heard about something as improbable as a time reverse curse, where everything became different once Harry Potter died. She listened in amazement while Holly described the changes she found at Hogwarts. Laurel scooted out from underneath the steering wheel, moving next to Holly, and held her tightly while Holly sobbed over the sacrifice of the stranger named Severus Snape, who had loved Lily Potter so much that he helped Holly, even though he knew it would mean his own death. When the tears subsided, Holly described the room she found with Albus imprisoned inside, and the mysterious teen named Tom Riddle, who was really Lord Voldemort. "And then the snake head came spinning up and through the mirror, breaking it," finished Holly. "The glass went everywhere." Holly buried her face in Laurel's arms. "What happened next?" asked Laurel gently. "I think that's when the spell broke," Holly said. "When I woke up," she continued, "everything was all dark again. My head hurt, my chest hurt. I couldn't breathe, and I couldn't feel my arms or legs or anything. It was awful. I was so scared." Holly shivered, remembering. "But Albus was there with me. And you and Dad were too," added Holly, "in my mind. And Albus got me to block," she continued. "And then I was okay again." "You were?" asked Laurel in surprise. "Why?" "Most of the injuries were actually Albus's. That's what I was feeling," explained Holly. "He was in pretty bad shape. Once I could block, I used Lily's wand to free Albus. The wand was working again, you see. And then we blasted a hole in the wall. Cousin Harry was waiting on the other side, with Professor Longbottom and Professor Lovegood. They pulled us out just as the last of the ceiling fell down, destroying the room. And that's what happened," concluded Holly, wiping the tears off her face. "I wrote you and Dad that note while they were taking us to the infirmary." "I see," said Laurel. "And the thing about the clothes?" Holly was silent for a while. Then she spoke reluctantly. "I had a hard time sleeping after that," she confessed. "Even though I knew they had gotten rid of the cursed plaque, something inside me was positive it would happen again. I was afraid I would wake up all alone again. Cousin Harry said that since our family had been protected, the things you did for me must have been protected also. That's why I woke up in my nightgown, but Sasha wasn't there. You got me the nightgown. Cousin Harry got me Sasha. Cousin Harry said that if it ever happened again, at least I would be properly dressed and have some protection if I were wearing clothes from you and carrying Lily's wand. I got it from over there, you see. So now I wear the clothes you got me, and I can sleep again." "And you carry Lily's wand?" "Yes, always," came the reply. In the silence that followed, the two watched the snow float lazily down from the sky. It had turned gray outside, and soon it would be dark. "Well," came a small voice, "do you believe me?" A long silence followed while Laurel considered Holly's words. Holly's story had been both scary and beyond belief. Why didn't she remember any of this if the family had been protected? Shouldn't they have woken up to see the same world? Or at least Dylan? It was clear Holly believed every word. Real or not, Laurel wished she could wipe away all the memories and assure Holly it had only been a bad dream. But all she could do was hold Holly. Laurel sighed. She ran her fingers over Holly's head, fluffing up her curly blonde hair. And then she placed her fingers under Holly's chin and tipped her head up and over so she could look Holly in the face. "Holly, dear," she began, staring directly in Holly's green eyes, "if someone had told me he had spent a day in an alternate world because of some crazed wizard in a journal, I'd have said that person was out of his mind. But that was before I almost lost you because the neighbor was dying. And last winter you picked out the one person in a crowd who needed a chair. I've a book," she continued, "that answers back when I write in it, and a necklace that changes color when you are hurt. So I know, contrary to all my beliefs, the impossible can happen. And when someone I love very much tells me the world went crazy, just for a day, how can I not believe her?" Laurel hugged Holly very tightly. "Let's just hope it never happens again." "So tell me," began Laurel as they drove away from the park, "if we were protected, how come your dad and I never noticed anything?" "I don't really know," replied Holly. "We wondered about that. Cousin Harry thinks that maybe the non-wizard world didn't change as much when he died. His aunt and uncle would have gone on with their lives as if nothing had happened." "But Vernon," said Laurel. We were home, but he was at school. Didn't Harry say Dylan got a new identity 20 years ago? If that never happened, surely Vernon would have noticed if people called him by a different name. True, agreed Holly. But it was at night. Maybe he was asleep the whole time. Maybe not. I wrote and asked Vernon if he noticed anything different, but he never answered. Vernon, began Laurel hesitantly. We haven't told him about you. I mean, the right opportunity just never came up. That's okay, said Holly. I told him. You did? Yeah, in a letter. I don't know if he believes me, but at least he knows. He kind of noticed all the funny things that went on last Christmas, especially when I sang that Halloween song. Holly laughed, remembering how both her parents and grandparents had sat frozen with forks midair and their mouths open while she sang. And he wondered. Don't worry, added Holly, noting the worried expression on Laurel's face. I've got a couple of Christmas tunes ready to sing should Grandma want to hear something this year. Did you actually perform them? Yes, replied Holly, but our big performance was at Halloween. The drama club put on a production of A Christmas Carol for Christmas. Our choir just had a small part. We sang some Christmas carols in the beginning, and Scrooge told us, "Bah, humbug." It's a really popular play at Hogwarts because the house ghosts love to take part in it as actors. Really? Yes. Our house ghost, the Fat Friar, was the ghost of Christmas Present. Sir Nick was the ghost of Marley, the Grey Lady was the ghost of Christmas Past, and the Bloody Baron played the ghost of Christmas Future, Holly explained. They are really quite fine actors, you know. I can just imagine, said Laurel dryly, while trying to picture the story with actual ghosts playing the part of ghosts. Unfortunately, Holly added, the special effects was done by Peeves. He's a poltergeist, you know. And he kept on lobbing snowballs at everyone instead of just causing snow to fall like he was supposed to. Is that so? Said Laurel. Yes, and at the end of the play, everyone started throwing snow at each other. It turned into a huge snowball fight. We had great fun, but some of the professors weren't too happy about it. No doubt, agreed Laurel. Say, she added, changing the subject, you know, my grandmother was a midwife during the war. I remember she told me she had to use a lot of home remedies when the medicine was scarce. I've got some of her old things packed away. Maybe there's something in there you can use for your potions contest. That's a terrific idea, said Holly enthusiastically. When can I get a look at them? How about I look for them tonight after dinner, replied Laurel. Thanks. Vernon Wycliffe found Holly at the entry closet bundling up. Her cat was excitedly winding herself around Holly's feet. You busy? He asked her. Not really, she replied. I'm just going for a walk. You want to come with me? Sure, said Vernon. He wanted to talk to Holly alone anyway, and a walk would do just fine. He grabbed his coat, hat, and scarf, and the two stepped outside. The cat ran on ahead, exploring. The day was crisp and clear with a light dusting of snow on the ground. Got any homework to do? Asked Holly. Vernon had been stuck doing 2 papers and a book report last year this time. Nope, said Vernon proudly. Kenny and I bust our guts getting it all done before school ended. It sure felt good to not have any over the holidays. Doing it had also kept them pretty much in the library during all their free time, thus out of Trevor's and Montague's reach, too. So tell me about Kenny, said Holly. He's nice, replied Vernon. He works hard, keeps me on my toes, and he's honest. I like him. That's good, said Holly. I'm glad you found him. A good friend is worth his weight in gold. They walked on in silence a while. Then Vernon spoke. So, do you know why Dad changed his name to Wycliffe? I told you, said Holly. It has to do with Cousin Harry. You did? Said Vernon in surprise. When? Holly looked up at him. I wrote you right after I got your letter. Didn't you get it? No, said Vernon, confused. I didn't. Oh, said Holly thoughtfully. I know the Smiths sent it, but that's okay, she added. I didn't include any specifics anyway, just that I would explain later. Well, I gotta admit I like the name Wycliffe way better than Dursley, but why did Dad change it? I expect he didn't have much choice in the matter, began Holly, seeing as Dad was probably still living with his parents at the time. He was? Uh-huh. And what's the name change have to do with Cousin Harry? It's rather complicated. We've got time. Well, you see, began Holly, there was this very powerful wizard named Lord Voldemort, and Holly talked a long time concerning what she had learned about Cousin Harry. Vernon didn't know how much she actually believed of her tale, but it was as good an explanation as any, if you believed in wizards. And Vernon still wasn't sure about that either. So let me get this straight, said Vernon when Holly had finished. You're saying that our grandparents had to change their name because this Lord Voldemort was trying to kill Cousin Harry? That's about it, agreed Holly. But why? Because Lord Voldemort might find them. Not that, said Vernon impatiently. I mean, why was this Voldemort guy trying to kill Cousin Harry in the first place? I really don't know, said Holly thoughtfully. No one has ever given me a reason for that. Why don't you ask Cousin Harry? No way, said Holly, shaking her head emphatically. He doesn't like talking about his past to anybody, not even his own family. I get the impression most of it is still too painful. I wouldn't know what I know if I hadn't nearly died last year and Cousin Harry had to try to explain things to our parents. Really? Yeah, apparently the Ministry of Magic has some sort of way to determine who is eligible to attend Hogwarts. Then it sends each student a letter inviting him or her to attend Hogwarts. I never got the letter, and Cousin Harry had to explain to Dad why. Apparently, Cousin Harry's friends hid Dad's family so well, even the Ministry couldn't find them again. So what happened to this Voldemort guy? Cousin Harry defeated him. There was this huge wizard battle, and then the two of them faced off, and Cousin Harry won. No kidding, exclaimed Vernon. Well, I guess this Voldemort guy had good reason to be worried about Cousin Harry. I suppose so, mused Holly. I wonder how he knew. Speaking of which, continued Holly, thinking of something else, do you remember that other letter I sent you last spring, the short one? What letter? I never got a second letter from you last year. You didn't? Asked Holly, surprised. I sent you one. I guess that explains why you never wrote back, she added. I wonder what happened to it. Vernon was silent a moment. Then he burst out. Trevor's, he said, saying the name with disgust. He saw that first letter of yours right after that page went blank, and I bet he's been wondering about your letters ever since. It wouldn't be too hard for him to slip into the mail room and intercept your letters. We used to do it all the time when, Vernon's voice trailed off. I don't do that kind of thing anymore, he confessed guiltily. What was the letter about? He added, changing the topic. Not much, replied Holly. I just wondered if anything weird had happened to you about a month earlier. Which month? Asked Vernon. March, I think, said Holly lightly. Nope, said Vernon promptly. I can't say that anything sticks out in my mind. Why? Oh, no reason, really, replied Holly distractedly. I was just curious. She had stopped walking and was looking across the street. Vernon followed her gaze, and his heart nearly skipped a beat. All thought of an intercepted letter forgotten. What do you think you're doing here? He asked, fearing he already knew the answer. He recognized the place from when he used to catch and sell cats. Holly looked at the house and garage across the street. There's more cats inside there, she said mournfully. Vernon looked more closely at the house and its surroundings. And more security, too, he observed warily, like the fence around the yard and the camera up in the tree. Holly raised her head to the tree, studying the camera. The fence was there last summer, she commented while she looked. It's not that hard to get over. You just used the tree, she said as she pointed to a stately tree that made up part of the fence. It also had a camera mounted in one of the higher branches. It was pretty easy to climb, Holly added. Vernon eyed the tree dubiously. The lowest branch Vernon could see was way out of his reach. With a flying broom, maybe, he muttered. But there's a dog now, Holly added casually. Dog? Said Vernon with rising panic. Guard dog? I expect, replied Holly calmly. But I haven't seen him yet, just felt him. Sasha could keep the dog busy if necessary. If I could just figure out a way past the camera, she mused. She stared thoughtfully up at the big tree with its fat branches where the camera was mounted. You can't be serious about trying to break in there again, said Vernon. It's too dangerous. You'll get caught for sure. You're probably right, agreed Holly, but her voice sounded more thoughtful than discouraged. I expect we should be getting back now, she said, changing the subject. Mom's probably wondering where we are. Holly turned around and headed back to their home. Vernon followed. What if Dad finds out? He asked anxiously. Holly merely shrugged and kept on walking. Neither spoke after that.